All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Grateful Wounds podcast. I'm your host, Tanasha Allwood, and I have a very exciting episode that I want to share with all my listeners today. I have a very special guest with me. Dr. Norris Dorsey is going to be joining me here on today's conversation, which is entitled The Sentence Beyond the Cell. Essentially, how families carry the weight of incarceration. Some of you may all know, if you've listened to maybe episodes 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there, I've shared my story about dealing with the pain of the incarceration of a loved one, and also I've shared my journey with some of the things I found out about my father at the age of 17. So having this conversation today is very important. And if you haven't listened to those first couple of episodes, I encourage you to please go back and listen to those on the Grateful Wound podcast. Again, my name's Tanasha Allwood. We're having a conversation that doesn't nearly happen enough, in my opinion. When someone is sentenced to prison, we often focus on the person left behind bars. But what about the families that are left behind? The children, the parents, the spouses, the loved ones. We all are left behind to navigate life and carry those emotional wounds, those financial wounds, and not to mention the psychological effects that the incarceration has on us. Today's episode, the sentence beyond the cell and how families are affected. As you know, like I just said, it's very deeply personal for me. And I just hope that anyone listening gets what they need out of this conversation. So without further ado, I want to have Dr. Norris Dorsey introduce himself.
Hey guys, how's everybody out there? My name is Dr. Norris Dorsey. I'm a college professor, and me too have had a father in prison, and he also passed away in prison. He served a life sentence, so I kind of had to deal with that as a young boy growing into a man.
Wow, I mean that just that sentence right there is just so is so powerful. I I'm sorry for your loss, Dr.
It's okay.
Dorsey.
He died. He died
Dorsey.
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, so, so thank you so much for being here together. We're going to explore the impacts of how kids process the absent parent, the emotional toll carried, and what healing can look like on the other side. So, as you mentioned, can you tell us a little bit just about your story and what it was like growing up with a father that was incarcerated?
Yeah. So, the story is very impactful as far as I'm concerned because I knew my dad, but I didn't really know my dad. And so um
Mhm.
I'm one of two. I have an older brother, and my mom had us at a younger age. She was 19 when she had me back in 1970. I'm a 70s baby. And so my dad was a
Yeah.
career criminal. That's how they labeled him. And I know now what that was all about back then because they were pulling the men's out of the family. They would stick little petty charges on them, keep them hustling, trying to make money because they couldn't get a job if they had the felony on the record. So one of my early childhood memories was with my dad, and he took me shopping, and he bought me a little short
Mhm.
outfit, and the shorts were so small and tight. I kind of got irritated. And I told my dad, I said, "Golly, these are really tight." For for me as a young boy, I knew that the shorts were really tight. But my dad was one of those kind of dads because I'm from Chicago. He was like, "Don't be
Wow.
ungrateful," and he made me wear it, and I had to wear that outfit. And we went all around town. He was doing his thing, and he would sometimes take me around. Uh, Less than seedy people. I know now, like I shouldn't have been there, but I was with my dad, so I was protected from that aspect. Um, because I moved to California and I was kind of bi-coastal, I didn't see him a lot. When I was back in Chicago is when, he would take the time out and come see me. But then he also was, doing little, 1 year here, 2 years there, getting caught up in the system. And so the relationship as a young boy was, very spotty. I remember he would leave me with his mom, which was my grandmother on his side. And, I formed a nice relationship with her as well. She used to cook nice breakfasts. So I have some childhood memories with him. But most of my memories was when
Okay.
he got sentenced to life and I was 18. I just graduated high school and, now my dad's in prison. And so, the first few years of him being in prison, he was trying to get out. And so, I was trying to help him from afar, but that
Yeah.
was very tricky. I'm not an attorney, so, I was reaching out to people to see if he can, see if I can get the help. But, I pretty much grew up as a man with my dad in prison. And I always tell people, I was like, my dad was a great dad from behind the bars, No, I wasn't able to physically get a hug and hold him and everything, but from behind the bars, he would give me lessons, teach me how to be a man, teach me how to clean up behind myself. Just things that I was missing. I wasn't getting that from all the men in my life, and so consequently, I was raised by women. My grandmother ended up raising me because my mom,
Yeah.
had some problems early on, and she's a musician, so she was chasing her dream. And so I was raised by my grandmother, and she did a good job. She got me out of high school,
Yeah.
and so I'm very thankful of that experience that I had growing up with my dad in prison.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, you and I, we met, it's been like 3 years now since we first met. I
It's
never
it's
knew
probably
all of this.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's probably been closer to 5 years, 4 or 5 years, because I think my dad might have just passed away when we met. But yeah, so time flies.
oh, okay. Well, time does fly. Wow. Yeah, so similar to you, when you talk about like first meeting your dad, I mean, I met my dad once, my biological father, I'll say. I met him once at the age of 17, and I share this on a previous episode, the one titled Fatherhood. But I didn't know him, and it was because he was in and out in prison all of his life. And I had only met him once, and I remember being told by my mom at the time, she said, if you don't, she put me on a plane to go meet him and his girlfriend. She's like, if you don't meet him now, you're never going to know who your dad was.
Mhm.
And shortly after that meeting, it was just a weekend trip to Detroit, Michigan, where I'm from. Shortly after that, about a week or two later, he committed another crime and was in prison for the rest of his life. So, probably like not like the rest of his life, but he got out, and then shortly after he got out, he passed away. So, um, all that to say that I mean, I can relate to having a father incarcerated. So,
Mhm.
I'm curious to know how did having a dad, a father incarcerated, how did that help shape who you are today?
Yeah, so a lot of the growing up when my dad in prison revolved around a lot of letter writing and phone calls, and so getting to know him was basically through the pen. My dad would write me pretty
Yes.
much weekly, if not every other week, and then he would call me. Either on the collect calls or now they have the system where they can call through a cell phone if they have one. but but I would say that it really shaped me because I grew up knowing that I didn't want to go to prison, right? And so, yes, I did some petty crimes. I did a couple things that, test the law and test the system, but I didn't do anything that was going to get me in prison like murder or, anything that I was a white collar criminal. I did white collar crime. So, if I can get away with it, great. If not, okay, then I learned what not to do, with his experience. And that also shaped me because one time I did get in trouble and I sat there in
Hmm.
jail and I go, damn, I'm just like my dad. And so that hurt me because I felt like I was doing the same kind of things, even though his crimes were different. And I was like, I got to stop this. And that's when I really
Yeah.
matured and became the man that I am today.
Awesome. Um, what would you say is more damaging when you think of the term incarceration? Is it the incarceration itself, or is it more of the silence around it? In your opinion, what do you think is more damaging?
Well, I think it's the incarceration itself. A lot of people will go into the system and they kind of cut themselves off from the world because they can't do anything. But my dad, he didn't let that stop him. He still stayed in touch with me. He stayed in touch with his friends and his family. And so I think the incarceration, when I couldn't really do anything to help him get out, I mean, I reached out to a lot of people because being in LA, you meet people. And I remember reaching out to Kim Kardashian
Yeah,
because he had a little project that she was doing and she got somebody released. And I was like, well, you know what? It's worth a shot. But Jamie Foxx, I reached out to, worth a shot. None of that really panned out. And I had a
hmm,
company, not a company, but I had a law firm. I think it was the Innocence Project. I was trying to use them, and they found a little loophole in it, but my dad just ran out of time. His case was under the Nancy Reagan three strikes law. So if you remember that law, like it didn't matter what the third strike was. If you were still in a Snicker or a slice of pizza, that was your third strike. You was going to go to jail. So my dad's crime wasn't that bad. He got into a fight over a girl, and he beat the dude up pretty
yeah,
bad. Beat the dude up pretty good. And I think what they did was they charged him with attempted murder because back then when you was fighting, you would, pick up any type of thing and try to, win the fight. And so he picked up a stick
yeah,
nearby. They was fighting in the dirt lot, and that was it. They said, "Oh, you tried to kill him with the stick." And so, it was some BS. I mean, I think a lot of the way the attorneys, work together and just try to get a case off their docket. That's what happened to him. But I still have all of his possessions that he had over 35 years of prison in my storage. I've
uh-huh.
struggled to go through them all. I did look at them, but then I would get emotional, and then I would just have to close the boxes. So at some point I'm gonna
Yeah,
go through it because
yeah.
I want to write a book on him.
Okay, okay. I could see that. I could see that. When you talk about book, I'm actually in the process of writing my first book as well. It's going to be called Grateful Wounds, which is, a little bit more of a deeper dive into my story and dealing with the incarcerations of loved
That's
ones
great.
in my life. So I encourage you to do that. So I'll be looking for it. When you think about healing, um, what is that like healing journey look like for you as you're navigating, now the loss of your father?
Yeah. So for me, my greatest talk to all.
Yeah,
It's got. I've been in the system, so I
yeah,
know how hard it is to be in a 5x7 jail cell, with a little small toilet and a faucet, But he did it,
yeah,
and that was a time where I had to really understand during COVID what he was going through. I'm like, oh shit, my dad was doing this for years, when they wanted to keep you in lockdown and keep you inside the house and don't go near nobody. So I think also just just being able to stay in contact with him. I visited him in
yeah.
prison a couple of times. It was great getting a hug from him. I still kiss my dad. My dad would walk up and give me a kiss on the lips, and I kissed him right back. And so, I transferred that over to my son. I don't do it But every now and again, I'll kiss him. You know, hey man, this is what a real father does with his son.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So when you think about well, me as a mom, I've shared with you and I've shared with listeners that I, have a son that was previously incarcerated for some time and then got out and then was back in for some more time. As a mom that had a son, what would you say to her to help navigate this time in her life? So, maybe even thinking about like your mom and what she went through, or, for any mom out there that might be going through something like this, what would you say to her? Yeah, yeah,
Let him know, things will change. He's gonna have to have a strong determination.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, awesome. Any new projects or anything you're working on currently that you want listeners to, know about? Yeah, 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 Nice. Awesome. I love that. Congratulations. And what was the name of your book? Choose Your Own Heart? Is that it? Yeah? Choose your heart. Choose your heart. Okay, choose your heart. Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely have to check that out. And I'm when I reached out to you, I was like, I don't know if he's gonna say yes or not. So I'm really glad that you said yes and that you're here. It's been great having you on this episode of the Grateful Wounds podcast. I just had one last question before we get ready to close out this session, and that's this. If there were millions of people, listening to our conversation today, what's the one thing that you want them to walk away with as they're navigating dealing with the incarceration of a loved one, whether it's their father, uncle, son, you name it, maybe even a mom? What's the one thing you want them to take away from this conversation today? Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Dorsey, for being here today and sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, and most importantly, sharing your heart. Today's episode reminds us that someone who is incarcerated and the impact of families, it reaches beyond prison walls. Families are out there carrying invisible burdens that the world never sees. So, in conversations like this, it's important to have, whether you experience incarceration personally or have a loved one behind bars or simply want a better understanding about the issue, I hope this conversation has inspired some compassion and healing and hope. Remember, your circumstances don't define who you are or your future. Your story is still being written. Thank you so much for listening. Again, my name is Tanasha Allwood, and I'm the host of the Grateful Ones podcast. Until next time, continue to live, lead your life with grace, purpose, and never underestimate the power of healing. For you are loved, you are valued, and you are not alone. So thank you so much for being here today. It's been truly a pleasure talking to you.